So we learned over here about tearing when someone is angry, which is not allowed. And then there's a question over here whether he's chayiv. So the pashto pshat in the Gemara is that if he's actually angry, he's never chayiv because he's only doing something negative, because he's giving in to his yetzer hara and he's giving it power. However, the Rambam holds that he's doing something negative, but he's chayiv according to Rabbi Yehuda, because at the end of the day he feels good. At the end of the day, he calmed down his yetzer hara. Yes, it was something negative. Yes, he gave in and he gave him power, but he feels good, and therefore he's chayiv according to Rabbi Yehuda, and according to Rabbi Shimon for sure he'll be potter because he doesn't need the actual tear. Then, not according to Rambam, or at least according to Rambam's pshat, in the Brisa it sounds like it's something which is allowed to do, to tear when someone is angry, but it's clearly not allowed. So the Gemara explains we're talking about someone who pretends to be angry in order to instruct, in order to guide those who he is meant to guide. So he pretends to be angry, and for that, according to a lot of Rishonim, he's allowed to actually tear and break things because it's for a positive reason. So he's allowed to do it, or at least in the example that the Gemara brought, when he's pretending to break, he's pretending to be angry, pretending to break. That's for sure fine. What about tearing for someone who passed away? So the Mishnah and the Brisa, the Mishnah which says that he's spotted, the Brisa says that he's chayiv, are talking about a relative, but the Mishnah is talking about a distant relative that he doesn't have to do kriya for. But there's more details. It was a distant relative, but it wasn't a Talmud Chacham. It wasn't a kosher Jew. It was a Rasha, and he wasn't there. If it was a Chacham or a kosher Jew or a Rasha, but he was there, then he must tear. And even by a Rasha that is passing away, if you're there, it's a Sefer Torah being burnt, because he has some Torah and mitzvahs. And therefore, when he sees a Sefer Torah being burnt, a person has to tear. Right? So if in any of those cases it's considered chayiv because it considers something productive, if it's none of those cases, it's a Rasha and you weren't there, even if it's someone's relative, he's potter because it's not considered something productive. Then we spoke about that one is supposed to cry for a kosher Jew which passed away, and for a chacham which passed away, then it's much more severe. And if it's a kosher Jew and someone cries, Hashem saves those tears. If it's a chacham, then and if he wasn't mourned for, then it's very severe. He brings that there's a pasuk which shows that the person deserves to be buried alive. A person deserves not to have a long life because he's not valuing the life of a chacham. He could have good life, but not long life. That's what the Gemara says. And then the Gemara also brings that if there's someone of a group or of a family which passes away, then everyone should take caution and do tshuva, because you never know if it's a personal thing or it's a general midas hadin. And the question is when a person has to be worried, whether it's if it starts from the oldest or from the youngest. The oldest is like the biggest fear that even he didn't withstand this judgment, or the youngest, because that's the behavior usually that the judgment starts from the youngest. So that's when a person has to be extra cautious. He has to be cautious. He has to be cautious. Good. That's what the Gemara is talking about. Fine.